back for another edition of the news. It is 7:30 on Label TV, your Pan-African channel. Today, November 17, 2017, Gauthier per channel gives us the headlines of the newscast.
In Guinea Conakry, the National Plan for Economic and Social Development is largely funded. Funding will exceed $20 billion when the country expected just $14.6 billion. Today's focus, World Cup 2018, the year of great returns for Africa. Egypt, Morocco, Nigeria, Tunisia, Senegal. Africa knows the identity of the 5 countries that will represent it in 2018. But the question remains, can the continent break the quarterfinals curse and push to the semifinals this time?
Ladies and gentlemen, once more, welcome to this evening newscast on your Pan-African channel. We open the news as the Ivorian head of state expressed Friday in Abidjan on the crisis going on in Zimbabwe. Alassane Ouattara believes that it is time that President Robert Mugabe, confronted with a coup by his army, gives his chair to a new generation. The story in this element. African heads of states do not have the same appreciation of the crisis in Zimbabwe. 2 days ago, Alpha Conde, president in office of the African Union, denounced a coup d'etat and asked the military to put an immediate end to the action. A position reaffirmed in an interview Thursday to a well-known newspaper. His Ivorian counterpart thinks differently. President Mugabe must be able to leave his office with dignity. This is the message I sent to the President of the African Union. President Mugabe is a personality who has devoted a good part of his life to his country and the liberation of his country from colonization. These are the words of Alassane Ouattara, President of Côte d'Ivoire, on the sidelines of a ceremony in Abidjan. But for him, the 93-year-old Zimbabwean head of state has certainly been the object of respect and even adulation to many Africans and young Africans. But the world has changed, and what goes to Zimbabwe calls on all politicians and not just African heads of state. Obviously, at his age and given the duration of his duties, everyone is aware that it is time that he gives his chair to a new generation, continued the Ivorian president. In Harare, the situation is still unclear. Robert Mugabe, who made his first public appearance since the coup on Friday morning at a graduation, remains, at least on paper, president of the country. He was, however, placed under house arrest with his wife Grace by the military on the night of Tuesday 14 to Wednesday 15 November. Furthermore, the refusal by the French justice system to hear the former chief of defense staff regarding the investigation on the French army's responsibility during the Rwandan genocide of 1994 is seen by the civil parties as a dismissal. Thibault Otongo Tabaga.
It was on October 31st last year that the Paris Court of Appeal confirmed the refusal by the investigation judge to question former Admiral Jacques Langsade and his deputy at that time, the former General Raymond Germanos. They were expected to provide explanations to the role of the French army that the association called Survie, the International Federation of Human Rights, and other civil parties accused of having knowingly abandoned the Tutsis in the hills of Bisesero between June 27th and 30th, 1994. Victims of a genocide perpetrated by the Rwandan army helped by the Interahamwe militia. According to the civil parties in a statement, this refusal to seek the people possibly responsible for the genocide, including those of the highest officials of the French army, seriously jeopardizes the investigation and could pave the way for the judicial non-suit. For the judge who recorded this refusal of hearings at the end of August, the question of whether the lack of intervention of the military concerns only the officers who have already been heard or all members of the turquoise force because they enjoyed a sufficient autonomy vis-à-vis the staff in Paris, where investigation is almost at a standstill. A number of hearings requested in 2015 have not taken place, and essential documents to the understanding of events have not been provided by the Ministry of Defense.
This time, in brief and images, the UN Security Council on Wednesday unanimously voted a year-long extension of its peace mission in the Central African Republic, which will be reinforced by 900 soldiers and will have to be more mobile and reactive. This strengthening of MINUSCA was requested by UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, who warned of a risk of ethnic cleansing in the country. According to the resolution adopted by France, the force is authorized to deploy on the ground up to 11,650 people, including 2,080 police officers and 480 military observers. It should allow the UN to stop the spiral of violence and increase and recreate, a positive dynamic in the Central African Republic, said the French ambassador to the UN in the country, Francois Delage. Moving on in this newscast, we now talk and we move to Tanzania as 11 people, including foreign tourists, died this week in Tanzania in the crash of an aircraft of the Coastal Aviation Company on safari in East Africa. More details with Thibaut Otungu Tabaga.
On Wednesday this week in Tanzania, a plane crash killed 11 people, including foreign tourists on safari. The accident deeply saddened the officials of the Coastal Aviation Company, and families of the 11 people lost their lives during the tragedy. The company said they were deeply saddened to announce that 11 people had died in a crash of their plane on Wednesday morning in northern Tanzania, as reported on their website. The Cessna caravan plane carrying 10 passengers crashed near the crater of Mpakai volcano in northern Tanzania. However, it took several hours to find the cabin because of the isolation of the site, and bodies that were not yet identified the same day were apparently all found, according to a representative of the nearby park Serengeti. Among the victims were British, Germans, and American nationals, as well as Tanzanian tourist agents. An investigation will be in progress, and CEO Julian Edmunds, who said he collapsed because of the crash, promises that his company will do everything possible to help the ongoing investigation to determine the cause of the accident.
Also, yesterday afternoon, Friday, deliberation unfolded at the National Assembly of Cameroon with House Speaker Cavaye Lege Jibril leading plenary sittings in the country. The current November session is dedicated to the 2018 budget and other burning issues in the country. Our correspondent Elise Kenimbeni reports.
The two discussions at the lower house of parliament were principally centered this day on the different bills to be amended during the one-month plenary session dedicated to the 2018 budget. The hope is to witness an increase in the budget in spite of the economic crisis that rocked some parts of the country.
We expect more money to be put on the crisis, and we expect more money also to be put in preparing our football team and in preparing the stadiums for the 2019 celebrations of football in Africa. I think with the rising oil prices, the prices of oil have moved a bit up. They are now at $60. We hope it will continue to increase. If it continues to increase, the budget should reflect this, and the people should come out happier. We are also happy to learn from the president that prices are going down. So our households are spending less money than they used to spend before. This again is a very good government policy.
Alongside the examination of the Finance Bureau, other burning issues such as the state Anglophone crisis and the Boko Haram insurgency will be reviewed. Yet, opposition parties like the Cameroon Democratic Union of Adamu Damjoya intends to voice out its long-standing request.
We remain focused in CDO on the modification of the constitution and modification of the electoral code, which will permit the election of the president of Cameroon to 2 terms of ballot, renewable just one time, because it's very important. And we just, as MPs, want Parliament to play its role.
As deliberations continue, highly expected are the ministers in their traditional passage before the MPs in order to defend their ministries' envelopes.
Talking about the National Assembly of Cameroon yesterday evening, an incident occurred and this Baptiste was burned down. The hemicycle of this building seems to have been spared by the flames, but the fire that devastated the administrative part of the Cameroonian National Assembly in Yaoundé on the night of Thursday to Friday. Get the story in this report. Fire in the National Assembly this Thursday night. The flames are visible on the third and fourth floors according to witnesses present a few meters from the site and an announcement made on State Radio Television, CRTV. The site was secured by the police while firefighters were working to extinguish the fire. The state television equally confirms that the flame had ravaged 4 floors of the administrative block. The fire, which occurred in the evening inside the administrative part of the assembly on the front part of the building, was completely off Friday morning. The origin of the disaster remains unknown, but the hemicycle was apparently spared, it was noted at dawn. The entire upper part of the administrative building beyond the third floor was ravaged. Many deputies of all parties, the administrative authorities, as well as the president of the assembly, Kavaye Yege Jibril, went on the spot. According to spectacular images broadcast on social networks, we could see these flames rising to the height of the disaster, several meters to the sky, and many incandescent debris flying above the fire. Talking about this incident, we have online our correspondent in Yaoundé, Elise Kenimbeni. Elise, good evening.
Good evening, Eva.
How are you doing? And the first question I would like to know about this incident, what is the situation in the country?
In fact, from latest information, because I'm coming from the field, we have just to say that the entrance into the National Assembly has been restricted from entry. The passage of people is being restricted, and everyone is being filtered at the entrance. And forces of order from the Gendarmerie and Police Corps have been posted since the fire incident occurred last night around 10 p.m.
What do firefighters and police think about this incident?
It is true that we did not hook up with the firefighting brigade because when we're coming on the field, they are about leaving already the spot. But we have to say that from time to time, the firefighting brigade enters into the National Assembly, then moves out because they're securing around where the incident occurred. But from clear indications, the building that burnt, of course, was caused by some electrical failure from the latest information, but really the firefighting brigade, we did not hook up with them and they did not give us some clear information. The only things that they told us that we cannot approach the building because the building could burn again.
What about the police? Has any investigation been opened on the matter?
Yes, there are inquiries that are already going. That is some information gotten from the communication unit of the National Assembly, because us journalists, we had a tete-a-tete with the director of the communication unit of the National Assembly, who told us that inquiries are on the way, and we should put aside the fact that there are some manipulations around, as many people were saying around since this morning. So there are inquiries that are going on since this morning.
According to some sources and some rumors in the country and made by some people on social media, we hear that maybe the Anglophone crisis or the anger of some Anglophone in the country may be the cause of this incident.
Okay, it is true that when the incident occurred, we had the SDF parliamentary group president, Honorable Joseph Banazem, who was on the field, and he was really expressing the dismay of all the MPs, though they, you know, some 2 days ago, Eva, they boycotted the opening session of the National Assembly. But we don't have those information. We are still expecting the Minister of Communication, who is Cameroon's spokesperson, to explain the situation, and his house is expected to be very soon. Though I hook up with the person in charge of communication at the Ministry of Communication. She said that the minister was supposed to speak in some few minutes, but we really don't know what is the situation all around.
And finally, are there any deaths or wounded reported in this incident?
No death reported, of course, and no wounded, because when the incident occurred, no one was already there. Since it occurred at around 10 p.m., almost everybody already left the National Assembly. This was just taken after the plenary sitting that was taking place at 6 p.m. yesterday.
Okay, Elise, we stay tuned to you and we hope that you come with more information in the next days concerning this event.
Okay, Eva, I have to thank all the team of Ladder TV. It is so when we are going to have other informations and other indications, we shall come back on this information. But let us recall that the session of today that was supposed to take place was interrupted this afternoon since there's no electricity, though the hemicycle did not burn, but the session that was supposed to take place was interrupted since the session of November 2017 is dedicated to the voting of the 2018 budget.
Okay, Elise, we thank you for this intervention in the newscast. It is always a pleasure and have a wonderful evening.
Okay, thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we move on in this newscast and it is time for economic news as announced in the headlines. $12.6 billion in firm commitments were made during the 2 days of talks between the Guinean government and the partners and its partners in Paris. With the support of the IMF and the IFC, as well as the $6 billion promised by China in another framework, the funding will exceed $20 billion when Guinea hoped $14.6 billion. This is the story. Watch. The objective of Alpha Condé, who came to Paris with 10 of his ministers on the 16th and 17th November to meet Guinea's bilateral and multilateral partners, was to raise $14.6 billion, the projected amount of the National Development Plan, Economic and Social Council, in short PNDES, for the period 2016-2020. $12.6 billion in firm commitments, including $7 billion from the private sector and $1.6 billion from the World Bank, and finally $1.4 billion from the Islamic Development Bank and the Arab Coordination Group have been taken during the discussions of this advisory group. To this will be added a future extended credit facility still undisclosed, which is expected to be validated in December by the IMF and the support of the International Finance Corporation, in short IFC, which is expected to communicate its commitment during the year. Also, during Alpha Condé's visit to Xiamen last September, agreements were signed with China for $6 billion. This is a total amount of more than $20 billion, according to the Guinean government, which welcomes this immense success of this meeting. The annual $3 to $3.5 billion provided by the PNDES must make it possible to finance major hydroelectric projects, some of which have already been completed, such as the Kaleta Hydroelectric Dam, the construction of road and rail infrastructures, including the Guinean part of the Conakry, Bamako, Bobo, Dioulasso Railway, as well as basic social projects. As we talk about innovation and development on the African continent, we learned that lightening Africa is a big deal. Nevertheless, a Nigerian entrepreneur seems to have found the solution in providing electricity and solar panels on the continent. We listen to Giovanni Ondamba, who tells us more.
Ario Adefolarin, a Nigerian entrepreneur, is reported to enjoy sunshine almost year-round in the northern city of Yola in Nigeria. The sunshine is so dear to him as it helps offer an alternative power supply and allow him to train the youth in sustainable energy. Ario set up last year 16 solar panels and trained more than 700 people. So far, many projects have been implemented on the continent. For instance, the project Econ Lightening Africa is reported to have provided not less than 100,000 street lamps, 1,000 solar micro generators, as well as 200,000 household electric systems. In addition, all these solutions were proposed and installed in targeted localities, creating direct and indirect jobs, mainly for local youth. Electrifying Africa is one of the challenges to be won, as many households in Africa are in need, especially in its countryside. Meanwhile, in big cities, power cuts is a serious issue that affects people's activities. Definitely, moving solar is surely the best way to enlighten Africa, since most of the countries in Africa are blessed to have a special sunshine.
The previous report confirms to us that one more time, nothing is impossible for Africans. Now, time for culture in this newscast on Saturday, November 10, 2017. Marvin Records superstar Ricardo Banks shut down Rivers State Capital in Lagos, Nigeria, to enable Close-Up Cool Breeze to host the biggest party at Uniport to find the next big star in Garden City, Nigeria. More details reported by Georgine Mpiga.
On November 10, 2017, Marvin superstar Ricardo Banks and DJ Altims shut down Rivers State Capital to enable Close-Up Cool Breeze to host the biggest party at the University of Port Harcourt, in short, UNIPORT Gymnasium, to provide students an ultimate music experience in Lagos, Nigeria. Close-Up brand manager George Umar says that he believes in the youths and tries to encourage them to become the next big music superstars, rap artists, and even fashion designers. This party was to enable the youth to showcase their music skills to the world. Close-Up Cool Breeze filled the atmosphere of this party with great music and even great prizes such as iPhone 7s, branded shirts, and held fantastic challenges in order to find the next music star from the Garden City of Nigeria.
As announced in the headline Sporting News in Focus today, many people agree that Africa is well represented in the Russia 2018 World Cup. Still, a question remains, can the continent break the quarterfinal curse and push to the semi-finals this time? Details by Gautier Perchano.
The 5 African teams representing the continent in the Russia 2018 World Cup are now known. Everyone seems to agree that Africa is well represented despite Ghana's absence. Breaking the curse of the quarterfinals and going to the semi-finals has been the focus of many comments over the social media. Nigeria made a brilliant comeback from 2 goals down to beat Argentina 4-2 into the city of Krasnodar. That amazing victory is a positive sign, which shows that the Super Eagles are fit to face bigger teams. However, can Alex Iwobi and his teammates show the whole nation that the country's flag can wave high in Russia? As for Senegal, the way the Teranga Lions beat South Africa in Polokwane should be an ominous warning that this Senegal team does not mean to play. As a reminder, Senegal reached the World Cup quarterfinals in 2002. However, can Liverpool's Sadio Mane and the outstanding Kalidou Koulibaly of Napoli be able to do more and push to the semi-finals? Morocco is back at the World Cup for the first time since 1998. Hervé Renard's troop came through a tricky group without conceding a goal. The 2-0 victory over Côte d'Ivoire in Abidjan was a masterclass in defensive organization from their French manager. The Atlas Lions will not just be making up the numbers in Russia, since the team features talented players who could make quite an impact. For Egypt, the 1-1 draw against Ghana in Kumasi ended a long journey for Hector Cooper's team. Now, the task for their Argentinian manager will be to prepare for the first World Cup since 1990, knowing that the Pharaohs have not won away from home since beating Burkina Faso on penalties in the semi-finals of the Africa Cup of Nations back in February. Still, can't the Pharaohs create emulation? After Tunisia's failure to qualify for the past 2 World Cups, the team validated its ticket to Russia after a nervy 0-0 draw in their final match against Libya. However, one question remains. Can one of those teams break the quarterfinals curse and take the continent to the World Cup semi-finals for the first time in its history?
This newscast was produced by the entire staff of the English newsroom and the technical staff of Label Television, your Pan-African channel. We thank you for watching and we thank you for choosing us to inform you. It is always a pleasure. And don't forget, on Label Television, the best is yet to come. Goodbye.